It's really interesting that having played some sports growing up, I think one of the biggest things it probably taught me was not how to be a better athlete, but it taught me a lot about teamwork. And that comes from coaching, right? I mean, you run into the same thing professionally. You learn how to be a part of a team. And I'm sure this has been brought up on podcasts in the past, but you spend more time with the people you work with than you do your own family most days, right?
Right.
So you really kind of learn that cohesion. But I guess the thing I'm kind of wondering about is, from your perspective, I have friends that work in schools, right? And I have a friend of mine that went to his administration and he wanted his students to read a book, and the administration immediately was like, no, absolutely not. And he finally got them to the point to where they could read it because he showed the educational benefits of it. But with the school's administrations, how well have they adopted the idea of esports? Because, you know this as well as I do, for a long period of time, gaming was kind of this, you're just a lazy couch potato sitting around doing nothing kind of thing. And now there's this huge explosion of it. How well has it been adopted?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. The adoption is still, I would say, immature overall across K-12, at least in the U.S. Some other countries have adopted it, embraced it a bit more than others globally. But it is the fastest growing K-12 program in schools. So the plus side is it's immature, but it's growing at an extremely fast pace. And so some of the things that are become really compelling is there isn't a big propensity or willingness to take risk in K-12. These are public entities. You're responsible to the parents. Every parent is a critic. Having worked in schools, it can be really tough. You go to these board meetings, and it is open outcry from the public for every decision you make, right? Everything you do. So that makes it difficult. Everybody's waiting for somebody else to take the risk. The good part now is that so many schools have taken that risk and shown success and proven that success, and in fact surpassed most expectations, that the adoption is skyrocketing. So the way that I was invited to speak at this conference that's coming up is that they had already booked speakers for this conference, and then they ran a survey 2 weeks before, maybe 3 weeks ago, and asked the registered attendees what topics they would like to hear about during the conference. And the top requested topic was esports, only they didn't have a session scheduled on esports. So this is where they brought us in, knowing that we as a company support esports teams. We've built esports arenas, and that networking is really the platform that can make or break an esports experience, right? So there are K-12 specific programs to how to build your own internal K-12 esports team and what factors are important. But without making sure that the technology itself is working, you're really going to create just a whole bunch of frustration. And that's where we can step in to help and make sure that goes well. So that'll be a big portion of the topic that I'll be sharing during my session. I want to give you two interesting kind of quotes here. One that I like to say, and I'll be mentioning during my session, for those who have any doubts about the value of esports in a K-12 environment, if you go into a classroom, ask those students how many of them participate in a school sport as part of a team in that school sport. And you may get 3 to 5 students in any given class total, because there's a finite number of students who can participate. The teams have a finite limitation on the size. There are athletic ability limitations as well. And then we separate by age and gender and all these different things to where it limits the number of those who can participate. Now ask that same group of students, how many of you are going to play video games today or play video games every day?
Yeah.
And you're going to see 75 to 95% of those students raise their hand. Now, that difference between those who are playing school sports and those who are playing games and not being recognized, they're not getting all of those same benefits, right? So you're actually now giving a certain group of students different learning benefits in a public education than those others, right? So now we're opening the equality of opportunity. This is a digital equity and inclusion play, a diversity play. In esports, you've got students of different gender, different age, different physical ability, disability, are all given accessibility to play with one another and access to learning those same things that we talked about earlier that most people learn in some athletic sport. Now they have the opportunity to learn that kind of teamwork and team sports and benefits as well. The second thing that I'll recommend people think about is, if you have kids, should be something obvious to you, is that what's one of the first things you take away when your kids don't behave? Okay, no video games, right? Taking that away. Why? Because they value that. It's something that matters to them, right? So if you apply this into a school environment and you think that to participate in the esports program, it is not a right, it's a reward. And so you must maintain a certain academic achievement level. You must also maintain certain behavioral standards. And I can't tell you how many schools I've heard turnaround stories about students who weren't showing up for school, weren't performing in their grades, were having all sorts of behavioral issues, that once they were given the opportunity to know that, hey, look, if you meet these basic things and we will help you do those things, you can participate in esports. The turnaround stories are amazing. Those two things alone, when you tell that to some K-12 administrators, are like, I'm in, I'll try it.
Yep. Yeah.